Defense attorney Gray zeroed in on Diamond's admission that she and her sister smoked marijuana while they were hanging out together before picking up her daughter. He repeatedly asked her why she smoked weed before picking up her daughter, and she responded, "Because I wanted to." He said to her, "You know it's illegal," and she simply replied, "Okay." Defense attorney Gray also questioned her about statements she made at a rally where she stated the police withheld food and water from her and her daughter for 5 hours. His motive was to present her as a liar to the jury. He tried to imply that she was lying by saying that not once during the 27-minute interview at the police station did she ask for food or water. The incident occurred around 9 p.m. She and her daughter were taken home at 1 a.m. That's a 5-hour time span. He asked her why she claimed she didn't get food or water, and she replied, "Because they didn't give it." Throughout the questioning, Diamond had moments of tearfulness, especially when she explained the impact Philando's death has had on her and her daughter's Deanna's life. At the end, she was asked if she had been told by any lawyers that she should testify truthfully. She said she was told to tell the truth, which she did. A trial reporter stated that Diamond was strong and dignified in the face of ugly questioning meant to dirty her up and make her look like a liar. After Diamond, the next witness called to the stand by the prosecution was Officer Yanez's partner on the scene of the shooting, Officer Joseph Kaiser. He was also a use of force expert in the town of St. Anthony. He described the steps for a standard traffic stop, including stopping in a safe place, using emergency lights, notifying your partner or dispatch, and standing in a safe zone when at the driver's window. The space between the front and back windows, known as the B-pillar. If you notice, Yanez doesn't use the B-pillar technique, which you would think he would if he really thought Philando was an armed robbery suspect. Officer Kaiser agreed that most men keep their wallets in their right back pocket, so if a driver reaches in that direction, it would be normal during a routine stop. Officer Kaiser also stated that he had a carry permit before he became a police officer. He was asked what they were told to do if they were stopped by the police. He said they could tell the police officer they had a gun or not. He said the class taught him that he should either tell or not. The law does not require you to tell. He said that if he stops a person with a permit to carry, he asks them where the gun was located and asks to see their carry permit. Then he would tell them to keep their hands on the steering wheel. None of the things were asked of Philando before he was killed by Officer Yanez, need I remind you. Officer Kaiser was then asked what actions he personally would take during a traffic stop, and he said the first thing he does is run the license plate to see if the car is stolen, if there are any warrants, and to know more about the driver. But in the footage, you'll notice it appears that Yanez does not run the plates. This is supposed to be a standard stop and ID situation. Officer Kaiser continued his testimony by stating that when he arrived on the scene, Officer Yanez was already at Philando's driver's side window. Officer Kaiser stated that he was on the passenger side window at the C-pillar, the space between the back seat window, observing the passengers with his thumbs in the edge of his bulletproof vest. The car windows were drawn down and he did not smell marijuana, and that he had no concerns about his safety at the time. Based on the footage, Officer Kaiser does appear relaxed and unconcerned about any risk to his safety until Officer Yanez opened fire and causes him to run off to find cover. Typically, de-escalation is used to control a suspect's behavior. But in Yanez's case, Attorney Collins said that Officer Yanez was responsible for escalating the situation. Officer Kaiser says that better training might have helped Yanez avoid that and given him more time to react. It took about 6 seconds from the time Castile said he was armed before Yanez started shooting. He pulled out a gun and started shooting when he thought there was a dangerous situation that wasn't. The prosecution went through the video over and over in short increments, showing Philando's head movement to the right when he got his insurance card, then moved to the neutral as he stated he had a firearm in the car. He stated that Philando's voice was relaxed and his right hand moved at a reasonable speed, and he still did not feel threatened. Officer Kaiser stated that he didn't see anyone reach for a gun from where he was standing. Suddenly, he was surprised when 6 or 7 shots was fired. Yanez did not communicate that there was a gun in the vehicle. There wasn't time. He moved back to where he was before standing at the last point of cover. He actually crossed Yanez's line of fire when running back, which put him in danger. He was asked if passengers would have been in fear for their lives in that situation, and he said they could have. When asked if he knew where the gun was, he said, "I don't know where the gun was. He didn't tell me where the gun was." He agreed that the law does not require a person to say there is a gun or where it is. The prosecution noted that Philando went above and beyond, and that Kaiser replied he volunteered it. Kaiser tried to cover for Yanez by saying that he had been taught that it takes longer to recognize and police have to be proactive and shoot at center mass until the threat is stopped. "I think he followed protocol. He looks at the jury and spoke to them anytime he said something positive about Yanez." He was shown a picture of the interior of the car from the driver's side with the seatbelt receiver on the right side of the driver's seat, and he agreed that reaching to the right would be consistent with trying to unbuckle the seatbelt. The squad car video was played again until the end, and you could hear Yanez meeting with the supervisor. He gave what sounded like a rather scripted story about why he did shoot Philando.
Are you able to move the squad up so they're not all filming
I'm
across?
fucked up right now.
Okay. Maybe mine or something?
I need you to just breathe. Okay? Breathe. Which direction did you fire your weapon?
Right at the driver, I had it right out.
Okay.
I had it pointed down. I don't know how many rounds I let out or anything.
Okay. So you were, I just need to know which one's your car right here.
Mine's the one that's pulling him over.
Okay. So you pointed just directly ahead of
Just directly at him. I had it at my waist.
Was he sitting in the car or was
He was sitting in the car, seat belted. I told him, "That's your license." And then told me he had a firearm. I told him not to reach for it. And when he went down to grab, I told him not to reach for it. And then he kept it right there, and I told him to take his hands off of it. And then he had his grip a lot wider than a wallet.
Okay.
And I don't know where the gun was. He didn't tell me where the fucking gun was.
Okay.
And then it was just getting hanky. He was just staring straight ahead, and then I was getting fucking nervous. And then I told him, I told him to get his fucking hand off his gun.
Okay. Okay. Is everybody
Fuck!
Is everybody in custody? Do we have everybody? Were there two
There was
people in the
just
car?
3 people in the
Three
car.
people in
It
the
was
car.
a female front seat passenger, the little girl in the back,
Breathe. Breathe in.
and the dude.
Okay.
From having been through this before, listen to me real quick,
listen. Okay.
So
Breathe.
I know you want to
Breathe.
talk about it, but there's things we need to know.
Yep.
If there's any other suspects, you said no.
Yep.
What direction did you fire your weapon?
Yep.
I had it down his hip. I had it pointed down
Into
at
the
diagonal
Okay. Nope. So we're just bringing it on.
into the car.
Yep.
It's all around there in the
Okay.
car.
Good.
Okay.
Good work. And then there's no other outstanding suspects, and nobody else is injured that you know of.
Nobody else is injured that I know of.
Okay. Let's get you out of here, buddy.
Yanez never claimed he smelled marijuana and said he did not see a gun. Only after the investigation was over did he claim he had seen a gun. Day 7 focused mainly on testimony of use of force experts and crime scene evidence. The pieces of evidence presented were Exhibit 39, a photo of the rear of Philando's car that showed the brake lights worked. Exhibit 40 was a picture of the passenger seat. On the seat were Philando's glasses and a baggie of suspected marijuana. The baggie was tied in a knot and was so small that it was the same size as one of the lenses of the glasses. You recall that Diamond testified that the marijuana was in a mason jar with a gold lid on it under the passenger seat. By the time the BCA, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, got there, the baggie was on the car seat with the mason jar and lid in the cup holder in the center console. Clearly someone had tampered with the scene before the BCA arrived. A series of pictures showed the trajectory and impact locations of the bullets. One bullet was embedded in the armrest next to where Diamond was sitting. One bullet had even gone through the driver's seat out the back and went through the back bench seat to the metal under the car. It went through the bench seat very near to where Diamond's daughter was sitting in her car seat. The car seat was also shown in the picture. One set of startling pictures was of Yanez in uniform after the incident, and Philando's bloody insurance card still in his upper left chest pocket. Prosecution witness 7, Dr. Andrew Baker, was up next, and before he started his testimony, the judge warned people that graphic photos will be shown and now will be the opportunity to leave. And this is your opportunity to skip forward also. Dr. Andrew Baker showed a series of photos, and some showed 4 entrance wounds in the outside aspect of the upper left arm and 1 entrance wound in the lower left arm. There were exit wounds on the inside of the left arm. There were 4 entrance wounds into the chest and 1 into the hip. He suggested that these were the result of bullets going through the arm and re-entering the body at the chest and hip level. 2 of the bullets into the chest pierced Philando's heart and were not survivable injuries. He stated that the wounds were considered indeterminate range of fire because there was not gunpowder residue on the skin, probably because of clothing. As part of the protocol, Dr. Baker took blood samples. The ideal blood sample for toxicology testing is the femoral artery, but since there was not enough blood there, he also had to collect blood from the chest cavity. Chest cavity blood is not ideal because it is often contaminated. Blood from both sources was tested separately and showed levels of 3 marijuana metabolites or byproducts. He stated that he is not qualified to interpret the results. At this point, his testimony was over and they called the witness who was qualified to interpret the drug test results of Philando's blood, Christine Engelbrechten. Christine is a toxicology professor with the University of Minnesota Pharmacy School. She reviewed the results of the blood test. She stated that when a person dies, the marijuana metabolites that are stored in the fatty tissue dump into the blood, called post-mortem redistribution. Test results on post-mortem blood are not reliable because of that reason. The blood test also cannot be used to determine when a person last used marijuana. In fact, no test has been developed to be able to determine when someone last used marijuana. The metabolites can remain in the system for weeks. The defense asked about the symptoms of marijuana use, and they included impaired coordination and decision-making, inability to concentrate and follow directions, impaired learning. The prosecution missed a golden opportunity by not asking if she was talking about symptoms of acute marijuana use and how long such effects would last, because the defense was trying to draw the conclusion that Philando was high on weed. Therefore, he may have been too high to follow Officer Yanez's directions to not reach for the gun. This would have been a perfect time for the prosecution to interject, but they didn't. Now, I absolutely agree that de-escalation training is a great thing to have in any situation, but that alone will not prevent these police killings. De-escalation training should coincide with the natural human instinct to preserve life, even in the midst of being under the stress of fear. The motto of the police across the nation is to protect and serve. Even if the citizens needs to be protected from the officers who have become consumed with fear of what may happen. Philando Castile lost his life because of the overactive imagination of Officer Geronimo Yanez. That should have never happened, and maybe more de-escalation training would have saved Philando's life. However, I doubt it. Jeffrey Nobles testified about the law regarding deadly force. Deadly force can be used if there is an immediate threat of death or great bodily harm. Graham versus Connor is the defining law of deadly force. There is 3 Graham factors Nobles stated. 1. Severity of the crime at issue helps to determine the likelihood of the need of such force. 2. The suspect poses an immediate threat to the safety of the officer or another. 3. The suspect is actively resisting or attempting to evade arrest by flight. Jeffrey Nobles applied the Graham factor to this incident. The severity of the crime was a brake light malfunction. The prosecution asked about Yanez's assertion that Philando was a possible armed robbery suspect. He replied that since it was based only on race and a wide-set nose, this was not enough to pull Philando over, or even form an opinion that he was a possible robbery suspect. Philando pulled over immediately and complied with orders. There was no evidence he was resisting. On the immediate threat factor, there is an objective test. This means that it's based on what a reasonable officer believes, not just what a particular officer believed. If a police officer believes someone was an armed robbery suspect, he should contact the dispatch to bring in other officers and treat it like a felony stop. This would be considered a high-risk stop. Yanez did not notify dispatch and did not use the procedures of a felony stop. He had the right to pull over Philando because of the broken brake light, even if this was not treated as a felony stop if they believed Philando was an armed robbery suspect. Yanez and Kaiser should have approached with caution. They didn't approach cautiously. Kaiser was even lackadaisical, Mr. Noble said. Philando was wearing a seatbelt. He was restrained and could not have gotten out quickly to hurt them. The dashcam video was shown in segments, and Mr. Noble was asked about applying the Grimm factors. When Yanez approached the car, he went to the window, not the B-pillar. When asked to provide license and insurance, Philando complied. When Philando stated, "Sir, I have to tell you I have a firearm," he was correct to do so. He had read the training materials from the class Philando took, and this was what they taught him to say. Yanez then said, "Don't reach for it." And both Philando and Diamond replied that he wasn't reaching for it. He did not even give clear commands, Dr. Noble said. In this case, we should have said, "Put your hands on the steering wheel," or in the air, because you want to see and control the hands. He did not rescind the demand to get his driver's license. If he was worried about movement, he should have gone into command mode and said, "Stop, freeze, put your hands up now." Police are trained to control hands, get the hands up, and to stop the movement. There are 5 seconds between when Philando told him about the gun and when Yanez shot. He could have given clear and unambiguous commands, move behind the B-pillar to create time and distance, and warn his partner to give him time to reposition. If he would have moved behind the B-pillar, he would not have had Diamond, her daughter, and Officer Kaiser in his line of fire. Officers are trained to consider the safety of innocent people. Officer Yanez should have told Kaiser about the gun. When other officers arrived, he should have told them about the gun. Even as 3 more officers arrived and one of them took over Yanez's position, he still did not reveal that there was a gun present, and he never said he saw a gun or where it was. At the end of the video, Yanez told his supervisor, "I don't know where the gun was. He didn't tell me where the gun was." Yanez should have asked where the gun was. He also told the supervisor, "I told him to keep his fucking hands off the gun," but he never said that. He then told the supervisor that he was getting nervous. This is not enough to use deadly force. The prosecutor asked for Mr. Noble's opinion on Yanez's use of deadly force based on his knowledge of the case and the law. He said, "My opinion is that the use of deadly force was not objectively reasonable. No reasonable officer would have believed that Mr. Castile was involved in a robbery. He was not a threat. This was a routine traffic stop. Officer Yanez did not follow his training. The situation did not warrant the use of deadly force." The defense really struggled to dispute Mr. Noble's testimony. They made some points about how much he got paid to do this report and how much he makes as a consultant in police cases. They also make a production about the fact that he has testified in about 40 civil cases and only 3 or 4 criminal cases. But noted by this courtroom journalist report, it could have been because police officers are almost never criminally charged. They asked him about articles he has written about police deception, commonly referred to as the blue wall of silence. "Did you find any evidence of deliberate deception?" he was asked. "I never spoke to the officers." He responded, "I did not find any intentional, malicious deceptions in the report." The defense asked him about Yanez's use of the car-to-car radio instead of calling dispatch. He answered that if Yanez thought it was a traffic stop, the use of the radio was fine, but if he thought it was a stop of an armed robbery suspect, he needed to call dispatch and treat the stop as a felony stop. The defense asked if he reviewed any prior use of force incidents by Yanez. He said there was a previous incident in which someone tried to take Officer Yanez's gun and his use of deadly force was okay. Things got really spicy when the defense asked if he understood that Yanez said he had seen the gun. Noble answered no. Yanez used a lot of qualifiers like seems like, I believe, etc. His immediate statement was that he never saw a gun. He said, I never saw where the gun was, which means he never saw a gun. He was asked about split-second decisions. He said 5 seconds is not a split-second decision. He was not looking for minor mistakes, but was looking at the totality of the circumstances. He talked about principles taught in police trainings like fire your weapon to stop the threat, not to shoot to kill. Use of force motivations is reactive. The totality of the circumstances creates the situation. An officer does not shoot to wound. They aim for center mass because adrenaline makes people less accurate. Killing is not the intent, but is often the outcome. In this case, there is no specific evidence that Philando looked like a robbery suspect. Yanez could not see his height or weight or hairstyle. He was a black man driving by the store with a wide nose. No reasonable officer would believe he was a suspect. He reviewed the St. Anthony PD use of force policy and said Yanez violated it. He was asked about the results of the internal affairs investigation of Yanez, and he had not been given the info. He was asked about the toxicology report showing that Philando had THC in his blood. He said he saw no evidence that Philando was impaired. Yanez followed him for 1.5 miles with no erratic driving. There was no delay in pulling over. There was no delay in following verbal commands. He was asked about an article he wrote on how to interview police officers in investigations. He agreed there should not be a lot of stress, and it's important to interview an officer right away. He disagrees with the 48-hour rule some departments have implemented. The defense asked if he was aware that Yanez hadn't slept before giving the BCA a statement, and if that would change the way he viewed the statement. He said no. The defense then claimed that Yanez was being harassed at his house that night, which was a bald-faced lie, and if this would change the way he viewed the statement. He said no. The defense ended by asking, is it your claim that Yanez had no reason to shoot Mr. Castile? He answered, my opinion is that Officer Yanez's shooting of Philando Castile was objectively unreasonable. The prosecution asked if there was anything in the Yanez BCA interview about being harassed, and he answered no. Court ended for the day. The prosecution was expected to rest their case tomorrow. Day 8 of the trial started with the prosecution offering a stipulation, or set of agreed upon facts. Exhibit 38. That 1. Philando Castile was not present in the Super USA store on July 2nd, 2016 during an armed robbery. And 2. On July 6, 2017, Philando Castile's driver's license and insurance were valid, and there was no warrant for his arrest. The defense agreed to the stipulation, and it was put onto the record. The prosecution also entered into evidence Exhibit 94A, the transcripts of the car-to-car radio transmission. In the end, the prosecution was able to get many of the defense witnesses to agree to a series of facts. 1. Philando was not involved in a Super USA robbery. 2. Philando had no intentions to shoot Yanez. He said he had no way to know but knew of no reason to believe he did. 3. The traffic stop was of a family on their way home from the grocery store and was handled as an ordinary traffic stop. Philando had complied with providing his insurance card, and it was reasonable to expect his license to be in his wallet. 4. Philando told Yanez he had a firearm. The law doesn't require this, and that he went above and beyond what the law required. 5. Philando had not yet completed complying with Yanez's request to retrieve his driver's license. 6. Even if Philando had gotten to his wallet, the shooting would have been reasonable if the wallet looked like a gun to Yanez. But Philando's wallet was white, orange, and other colors. No reasonable officer would have mistaken it for a gun. 7. Use of force incidents have to be based on what the officer knew or could reasonably have known at the time of the incident. The prosecution used a series of examples such as if a shooting happened that was unjustified, but it later turned out that the person had a warrant or his license was suspended. That would not justify the shooting because it was an unknown factor. Things not known to the officer or reasonably believed are not relevant. 8. The officer was not permitted under the law to use deadly force just because there was a possibility of risk of harm. All encounters involve risk. And 9. Just because an officer is nervous does not justify deadly force. Officer Geronimo Yanez started by giving his family details. Born on March 8, 1988, graduated from Minnesota State University, Mankato, got hired by Wallen Security as a security guard at Seagate Technology. Then he worked for a contract company who worked with Immigration Customs Enforcement, working as a supervising case specialist, which tasked him with watching over people who were in the U.S. illegally. Then he was hired into the St. Anthony Police Department in 2011. Transitioning into the case, he discussed the convenience store robbery that took place 4 days prior to the shooting on July 2, 2016, which he thought Philando was a part of. He was the second cop on the scene at the Super USA convenience store. He had seen the store security video and the still pictures from the video. Yanez then went into the events that led to the shooting of Philando Castile on July 6, 2016. Officer Yanez had been making traffic stops for speeding. He was on Carr Street with his car pointed towards Larpenteur Avenue. He then observed the cars driving eastbound down Larpenteur Avenue. Despite it getting dark, he claimed he saw the driver, who he claimed had brief eye contact with him. He claimed Philando had a deer in the headlights look in his eyes, which he considered suspicious. So he started following the car. He called his partner to tell him he was following someone who looked like a robbery suspect because he was a black man with a wide-set nose. Officer Yanez wanted to investigate this suspicion, but he would need an equipment violation or other excuse to pull over the vehicle. He put on his emergency lights and proceeded to make the stop. As he approached the B pillar of the car, he says he could smell burnt marijuana. He saw one of Philando's hands on the steering wheel and one hand just below. He addressed Philando, telling him why he pulled him over. Then he asked for Philando's license and insurance. Philando gave him his insurance card. Philando then told him about having a firearm. Philando's right hand was going towards his right thigh, and his hand was in a C shape. Yanez then claimed that Philando canted his upper body to the right. Remember, the video showed Philando leaning to the left, as if to relieve the weight on his right buttocks to get to his wallet, and blocked Yanez's view. He claimed that Philando totally disregarded his commands. He claimed he saw Philando's hand on the gun, and that's when he started shooting. He claimed he shot downward to the left to avoid the passengers. At this point, he started crying on the stand. He said, "I thought I was going to die." He didn't want to shoot Philando. That was not my intention. But I had no other choice because he was not complying with my orders. Officer Yanez goes on to say, after that, he stayed in the same position and called for a code 3. He saw Kaiser take Diamond's daughter out of the car, but was concerned about Diamond because she continued to move her hands after being told not to. Now you can clearly hear her say on the video, "I'm not moving my hands, sir."
Oh my God, please don't tell me he's dead. Please don't tell me my boyfriend just went like that.
Keep your hands where they are, please.
Yes, I will, sir. I'll keep my hands where they are.
When the Roseville police arrived, he thought he told them there was a gun, but he was under stress and he didn't. Someone took over his position and he went across the street with Sergeant Anderson when the St. Anthony PD supervisor walked up to them. That's when he told her, "I didn't know where the gun was. He never told me where the gun was." Yanez claimed that he meant that he never saw a gun until he saw it. He was then taken to the St. Anthony PD station. He stayed in there with Sergeant Anderson and was told that the BCA agents were on their way. His attorney, Mr. Kelly, arrived. Mr. Kelly is one of the 3 attorneys on his defense team. They decided he should not give a statement at that time. The BCA wanted to wait at least a day. So he was driven home by Officer Elliot Erdman that night between 1:30 and 2 a.m. Officer Erdman stayed with him, and while other officers stayed outside of his house for concern for his safety. He claimed he was receiving harassing phone calls and that people were knocking on his door and walking through his yard. He slept about an hour. He got a call early the next morning from the BCA and scheduled a noon interview. Officer Erdman drove him to the interview. Yanez says he didn't view the squad video before the interview. The agents explained the process, then took his statement. The defense asked Yanez if he saw a gun during his encounter with Philando Castile, and he said yes. He told the BCA, "I thought it was a firearm," which he said means it was a firearm. He told the BCA he seemed like he was pulling out a gun. He also told the BCA he saw the barrel of the gun. Now on the way home, he talked to Officer Erdman about the encounter and described the gun. After the BCA interview, he told Erdman that he accidentally told the BCA detectives he saw the barrel instead of the slide. Yanez testified that he followed all of St. Anthony PD's policies and that his use of deadly force was necessary and reasonable. The prosecution then began questioning Yanez. Yanez stopped looking at the jury and began looking straight toward the prosecution. He admitted he never told the BCA the gun looked like a Glock. When Yanez decided to pull over and stop Philando, he could only see him through the window and maybe through part of the windshield. He could not see his height, weight, or build to know if it matched a robbery suspect. Yet he followed Philando for 2 miles. He said he ran the plates and found that the car was not stolen and there were no wants or warrants on the driver. When he made the stop, he realized a child was in the car. He saw that the driver was seatbelted. He didn't use his flashlight because he wanted his left hand free. He admitted that when Philando started to move his right hand, he did not tell him to stop, to put his hands up, or don't move. After the shooting, he kept Philando at gunpoint because he didn't know how badly he was hurt. The prosecution asked about the cops at his house. Yanez said he did not discuss the incident with them. They were there because he was being harassed. Officer Erdman stayed at his house for 2 or 3 additional days. The prosecution wanted to play the audio tape of Yanez's 1-hour interview with the BCA to dispute his claim that he was under stress or to challenge some of the substance of his interview. They wanted to have the jury hear the tone of his voice and his exact words, but the defense objected and the judge wouldn't allow it. The prosecution went through the ways Yanez's story changed between what he said on the scene and during different interviews. In his testimony, he said Philando had a deer in the headlights look, but he had told a detective that Philando gave him a hard stare, then slumped down in his seat. Then in an April interview, he mentioned that Philando was wearing glasses. He told the BCA that Philando was not looking at him and was mumbling, but this was not heard at all on the dashcam video. They asked Yanez if there was anything that he said that was not on the dashcam video, and he was vague and admitted there wasn't really anything not recorded. He told the BCA that Philando had his hands wrapped around the gun, which he had never claimed before or in the interviews since. He told the BCA that he couldn't see where Philando was reaching, but now he says he saw it and there was the gun. They noted the many times Yanez used vague terminology like it seemed, it looked like, it appeared, I thought, etc. Later in the interview, he told the BCA, it just seems like he was pulling out a gun, and then told them twice that he saw the barrel. He said in yet a different interview that he did remember seeing anything in Philando's hands. He told an interviewing BCA detective that he saw Philando reaching between his thigh and the center console, but said nothing about seeing a gun. The prosecution asked that with all of the inconsistencies, is it your testimony today that you saw Philando reach down and grab a gun? The defense objected but was overruled. Yanez yelled, "It was a gun." But in the end, even with dash cam video, immediate aftermath video, total transparency, obeying commands, giving reassurances, the presence of a small child, having no warrants, a clean license plate, a calm demeanor, the presence of a beautiful young lady, a relaxed partner, nice weather, and years worth of training, none of that was enough to spare Philando's life when he crossed paths with a paranoid cop who was afraid of his own shadow and a nation of racists behind him. And Officer Geronimo Yanez was found not guilty on all charges. Even with video, audio, and written contradictions in his account of events, the jury couldn't even bring themselves to charge him with reckless endangerment after seeing bullet holes inches away from a woman and toddler. Where's the justice in that? I guess the only hardship visited upon former Officer Geronimo Yanez was that he was fired from the police department with a payout of $50,000.
We just watched another officer, police cop, get off for killing an African-American male, riding with his girlfriend, his fiance in particular, and a baby in the back seat. He was asked to identify himself and produce identification, Philando Castile. He was in the process of doing that, licensed concealed handgun holder. The cop panics and shoots this young man four times in the chest.
He what?
He panicked.
He panicked.
And shot him four times in the chest.
This isn't racially motivated.
And he killed him.
He panicked. 47% of all police officers lose their lives at traffic stops. Not because they're shot by someone, but because they're mowed down by a motorist that may be texting or is doing something else when they should be driving. When a cop walks up to your car, they are already on edge. They're already nervous. I get nervous when a police officer pulls me over. I'm white. And you're probably saying, why should I feel that way? Because I respect the law, and they have power and authority. And the very first thing I do, Quanell, is I put my license, registration, and insurance card up on the dashboard. Steve, I turn the dome light on, and I put my arms where the police can see them. I leave one hanging out the windows.
You and I
that
both
matters.
Know. Steve, stop
that
it.
matters.
Let me make my point. You and I both know you have the complexion for the protection. These cops are afraid when they're stopping African-American men.
4%.
And when they go to the car and see a black male face, they get nervous and they get scared, and many of them panic. In this particular case, this man got off for cold-blooded murder. He killed that young man who should not have been killed.
Jesse Jackson admitted when he walks down the street in New York City that he crosses over to the other side of the street in fear of a black brother. Why is that?
Because
it's because you guys, Quanell, you've stirred the pot so bad in the black community.
Jesse Jackson has been hanging out with so many liberal white folks to where he has lost touch with his own people. When you're a black leader and you're afraid to walk down the same sidewalk with your own people you claim to represent, well, you got a problem, brother. This cop killed this young man, and this young man should not have been murdered.
You are stirring
up
hatred and fear.
Must change.
You are stirring
If America don't change, she's going to destroy herself.
Martin Luther King wanted us to come together, and he said it should be the content of a man's heart, not the color of his skin. And yet you guys,
he wasn't talking to us. He was talking to you white folks.
He was talking to
no, it was white people that have to understand, judge a man on the contents of his heart and not the color of his skin. Black folks never saw color. You taught us that. We're the victims of that.
You look at a white person, you say, oh, right away,
no,
this person must want to kill a black person.
No, I do not.
You absolutely do.
I look at a man's actions.
And in 2020, he applied to be a substitute teacher, but his application was denied based on immoral character or conduct. St. Paul Public School Superintendent Joseph Gothard testified that Yanez's actions were hurtful and offensive to the community. Philando's mother, Valerie Castile, said that she didn't even know Yanez was trying to obtain a substitute teacher's license, and that she doesn't think he belongs in the classroom. She said children, particularly students of color, might have trouble focusing on what he was teaching and could worry that they were in danger. She said parents would also need to be notified if he was in the classroom. The community knows about what he did, and I don't think the kids will be comfortable even having him there, she said. We have to think about our children's comfort levels. We have to think about those children and the trauma they suffered because of what he did. Deanna Reynolds is the 4-year-old daughter of Diamond and the stepdaughter of Philando. She was seated in her booster chair directly behind the passenger seat where her mother was located. It's really impossible to calculate the psychological trauma of watching someone you call daddy being murdered in front of your young eyes. She is the secondary victim in the actions of Officer Yanez's cowardice and unfounded fear of a legal gun-carrying black man. But somehow this child found the courage and wisdom to assess the situation and calm her mother down, as seen in this video from inside the police car.
I can't really do it because they got me handcuffed.
It's okay, Mommy.
I can't believe they just did this. I'm
It's okay, I'm right here with you.
Please, Lord. Y'all, please pray for us, Jesus, please, y'all. I ask everybody on Facebook, everybody that's watching, everybody that's tuned in, please pray for us. Sister, I know I just dropped you off, but I need to be picked up. Don't cry, baby. It's okay. Oh, excuse me. Can you still uncuff me? Because I need to call his mom.
Yep, my supervisor is going to be with you.
Is he okay? Is he dead?
I haven't talked to the medics, to be honest with you, ma'am.
My phone's about to die. Can you grab my charger out the front?
Ma'am, you're not hurt, and your daughter's not hurt, correct? Physically, you're not hurt.
We're not hurt, but mentally, I'm scarred forever.
Yep. So we're just making sure that you're not physically hurt right now, okay?
Please let him be okay.
Yep, they're attending to him right now.
Well, can you guys just unlock this one back here? Because it really hurt, and I can't even hug my daughter.
Nope, my supervisor's going to be right with you, okay, ma'am?
I have to keep it attached with me.
Please, God, let him be okay.
My supervisor's going to be right here with you, okay?
Oh, please, God, let him be okay.
Your call has been forwarded.
It's heartbreaking to watch a small child forced to comfort her mother after her father was murdered by people hired to protect her and her parents. I hope this angel received the psychological help she needs and deserved. This event is always referred to as the Philando Castile case, the Philando Castile trial, the Philando Castile murder, or the fatal shooting of Philando Castile. But within that 62-second interaction, Officer Yanez fired 7 shots in less than 3 seconds, killing more than Philando. Officer Yanez killed the psychological innocence of his 4-year-old daughter, killed the hopes and dreams of his woman Diamond, and decimated the structure of that nuclear family, snatching away their primary protector and provider, leaving another black mother and daughter to fend for themselves without their anchor. In 62 seconds, Officer Yanez forced a 4-year-old child to take on adult responsibilities of consoling her mother after being given front row seats to the murder of her father. How long do you think it would take for Diamond and Deanna to get over this trauma? 2 years? 5 years? 10? How much money should these two be entitled to because of this infliction of trauma? $100K? $400K? Or $650K? Well, let me ask you, is $800,000 enough for you if that meant you'd be forced to witness the murder of your fiancé, but you also have to watch with your 4-year-old child? You and your child will have to deal with random bouts of depression that will last a lifetime. Lifelong PTSD, hundreds of hours of therapy sessions, non-stop media coverage of your life and your personal moments. If you were diamond, you were one step closer to becoming a wife, a claimed woman. Now with the death of her fiance, you have a 25 to 30% chance as an African American woman to ever becoming a wife. So, you tell me, is $800K worth it? But hey, I'm a realist. $800,000 helps no matter the situation, I won't lie, but once the money is gone, the pain, the trauma, and the PTSD will remain. Now compound that with the devastating fact that the person who killed the love of your life is allowed to go free. So no, I don't think $650,000 or $4 million is enough to erase such pain, trauma, or loss away with a new Lexus. But for Diamond and Deanna, they haven't a choice in the matter. They must carry on and attempt to make life as manageable as possible, so that whenever the sun rises, so does their drive and determination to make the next day more palatable than the previous. This is the story of Philando Castile. I want to thank every single one of you for watching the video, and stay tuned for the next case. My name is George. This is No Names Media, and now you, too, are anonymous. Stay safe out there, my friends. Until next time, I hope you stay in the shadows.